Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, good news today. If you're from Washington State, the magazine ban is on hold. There's been a stay of execution for anyone that has magazines. You're not in violation of the law. When I say magazines, normal capacity magazines, because, well, some states, including my own, has tried to ban them multiple times. And time again, we find out that that is unconstitutional. But to another note. So I have I guess I would have to say a nephew. One of my really good friends I've known forever. His son calls me uncle. So that's why I would say that I'd have to say he's my nephew. Because he kind of is. But he had some questions about bullet weights, specifically with the 5.56, and trying to explain that to him through a chat is not something I do very well. I can do it, it just takes longer than what it's really needed to be done. So the long and the short of this conversation, and we've had this conversation on New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union before, is barrel twist for the 5.56. The smaller the twist and the larger the twist, stabilize bullets different. Now, what do I mean by the smallest? So 1 in 7, 1 in 8, 1 in 9, 1 in 10, 1 in 12. Those are usually the twist rates of the 5.56, but it's also kind of compares with a lot of other calibers. And the closer the twist is, so what they mean is for one full revolution of the bullet is in 7 inches of the barrel, is roughly what they're saying. So the more the higher the number is, the farther the twists are apart from it. And what this leads to is the lighter the bullet, the 1 in 10, the 1 in 9, the 1 in 12 type twists do better. Okay? Because it takes that long of a twist rate for them to stabilize correctly. If you have anything faster, they kind of spin a little bit faster. You can still do it, but you'll see some accuracy problems. This gets really into the weeds, and you need to think about this when you start using heavier bullets. This is becoming a more and more of a popular thing with the 5.56. If you use like a 62 grain bullet, you want like a 1 in 8, a 1 in 7, a 1 in 9 will do it, but you're going to definitely see some accuracy problems there. What this means is you're going to see, instead of like a 1 MOA hole, you're going to see like a 1.5, maybe a 1.3, depending upon how good your barrel is. This doesn't seem to matter until you start getting at farther distances, because that little bit of a variance starts to worry you a lot as far as being able to hit your target. But if you have what happens is, if you use one of these heavier bullets in a longer twist rate, this is where I'm trying to short round this a little bit, you actually get the bullet won't stabilize in the barrel, so it'll actually keyhole, and that is not good. Number one, it wears parts of your gun. Number two, it's crappy for accuracy. Number three, you're just wasting ammunition at that point. And you're reducing the range of the weapon. Because instead of, a bullet flying like a football, it's flying like a razor blade through the air, end over end. And this causes them to not be ballistically stable, thus reducing the range that you would get from it. Not necessarily reducing the lethality, because the energy is still there. It's just not going to be very accurate. And that's what I was trying to convey to my nephew, is that when you start thinking about bullets, because he was asking what's the real difference between these, and I was like, speed is number one, and that's because of the weight of the bullet. If you have like a 55 grain bullet and you're going out of a 1 in 7 twist, 16-inch barrel, you're probably going pretty close to 3,000 feet a second, if not a little bit more. If you have, say, a 20-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel, now you're looking closer to 3,200 feet per second. And that doesn't sound like a lot until you start translating it into what happens with the 5.56 and when it hits flesh. And that's what the whole point of the round is for, is it's a military round. And it's kind of a hunting round, a varminting round. So what happens is when it hits flesh, it does more damage because that's what that bullet's designed to do. It's designed to have the velocity is what makes up for the lack of mass. So you can have, there's no free lunch in physics. You can have something going really, really fast but really, really light and have a lot of kinetic energy transfer. Or you can have something going slightly slower that's heavier with a lot more mass itself, and it translates kinetic energy to the target. Now, you start looking at the 5.56, and it's a perfect example of if you compare it to a hunting round like a .308. So what happens is the longer the barrel is in general, and it's kind of a wives' tale, but it's kind of true at the same time, but not nearly as to the degree that the wives' tale or the boomer wives' tale actually makes it out to be. A longer barrel allows for more of the powder burn to actually happen and more gas pressures to build up behind the bullet, which allows the bullet usually to travel a little faster. Now, there's diminishing returns here. If you look at the 6.5 Grendel is a perfect example for that diminishing returns. So if you have a Grendel, and my nephew's dad does, he has two of them, you know that the sweet spot for the Grendel is right around the 18-inch barrel mark. After that, you start seeing it lose energy, losing velocity. So you're not getting as much velocity out of it. The same thing goes for the Kalashnikov, the 7.62x39 round. It has a different type of cartridge design that allows a complete burn in the first 8 inches of a barrel. That's why you can have a Krinkhoff Kalashnikov that's still almost as accurate as a regular full-size Kalashnikov. But if you have something like a .308, where it has more case capacity and more powder to burn, if you have a 24-inch barrel versus a 16-inch barrel, what you'll notice is the velocities do change enough to matter, especially at long distances. So you're talking about a 2,800 feet a second versus a 2,600 feet a second type differential, so a 200 feet a second differential. What that translates to is range more often than not, but it also can affect accuracy. Bullet weights matter. And what I have found as a quasi long-range shooter my entire life, or, I like to say I'm a long-range shooter, but I know some that are a heck of a lot better than me. Heavier bullets do better because they buck the wind better, meaning that they're not affected by wind as much. Again, there's some diminishing returns there. The bigger the bullet, the bigger cross-section, the more it will be affected by wind. But it also has a lot more kinetics. So there's a point in when you're shooting a bullet that a bullet goes subsonic. Okay. Till then, I think it's called transonic or hypersonic. And that means it's going faster than the speed of sound. And when it transitions to that subsonic round, and that's all the rage with the 300 Blackout, that heavier bullet will require more of a parabolic arch to hit its target. So you're going to have to aim higher to get it to hit that. You're getting more of a rainbowing effect in essence when you're looking at the ballistics. And what this does is it allows it to get those distances consistently, but hit with enough authority to down said animal or down said target. And that's what the big thing is with subsonics, is that is where the bullet actually slows down and it's losing energy, so you're going to have to make up for that one way or another. And more often than not, you're going to compensate by correcting to go upwards so that you have more of a rainbow when you're looking at your target. So point of aim and point of impact will be different. This is where Kentucky windage comes into play. This is where scope doping comes into play, because you're adjusting for those things, knowing the trajectories and knowing what your bullets can do. And all this factors into why barrels matter, and why barrels, the twist rate matters. Because if you really get into the weeds with reloading and you're trying to make a precision rifle and precision loads to go with said rifle, you need to start at the ammunition itself. You need to pay extreme detail to it. Be consistent in how it's manufactured or how you reload it yourself. It's going to be optimized for the chamber, meaning that you're going to tailor your die settings so that they fit exactly in that with very little room. This allows the gas exchange from the cartridge to the bullet through the barrel a lot more efficiently. It also allows you to get those little bits and pieces of performance out of the cartridge and the barrel. You'll start seeing those accuracy differentials when you're paying that much attention to it. Then you look at how the barrel is cut, its longevity, meaning that there are different grades of barrels. In the AR world, if you buy like a Bear Creek build or a Bear Creek barrel, they're made at the cheapest ways possible so that they're not going to last as long as, like, say, one that came from Bravo Company or Aero Precision or someone who does, and I'm not even sure Aero Precision makes their barrels, but there's a lot of barrel manufacturers, and you pay for that differential in quality, where they make sure that the metallurgy is 100% sound and longevity is there, and they take extreme detail to how they cut the lands and the grooves, and that matters for accuracy. So does the crown of the barrel. The crown of the barrel is the very, very point of the muzzle, and that's the last thing that comes into contact with it. It's also a wear point for hunting rifles. So you are not supposed to clean a rifle from the front to the back if you can help it. There are certain guns, the Kalashnikov, for instance, isn't one that you would natively think that you clean from the back because you have to partially disassemble it to do that. But what you're trying to do is keep that crown in pristine condition, and if you're pulling on a cleaning jag one way or another, you have the potential of eventually wearing the crown on that barrel and making a difference in your accuracy. This is also where you start looking at muzzle brakes and compensators. And all this boils down to you're trying to make your barrel have the best harmonics possible as it throws the projectile downrange. And this all factors in, it all adds on to one another to make a perfect precision rifle. Now, I would tell you, having been one of those people that have done this for like a 308 to shoot matches, and tune the load and tune the gun and the whole bit, that are you capable of squeezing that accuracy out of it? And when I say that, I have some very competent friends that are good shooters, but they're not precision shooters. So they have done all the work for this, these particular things to make their guns the best they possibly could, and they still don't get the accuracy I would do with something less quality. Or then take said rifle that they have, sight it in for them, and let them recheck my zero and get better precision out of it than they can. And it's because of the difference in skill set. You know, some people just are good shooters, good enough to get the job done, but they're not going to be able to cloverleaf a group where they put 3 rounds on top of each other to where they make that perfect little cloverleaf. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, some people are better at soccer, some people are better at football, some people read books really fast, some people don't read at all. It's the same thing with the 2A. And when it comes to precision shooting, and knowing your weapon and knowing your rifle. This is where I'm glad that my nephew came and talked to me. It's because I'm a mentor, and that's what I try to do with the 2A. I talk about this all the time on New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. It's one of the biggest honors you have is to become a mentor to make sure people practice the sport safely, and 2, that they get the same type of mentality out of it. And what I mean by that is, yeah, it's fun, but you need to take this a little bit more seriously, because this can end your life and someone else's. And that's the hard, cold facts. But it's really fun if you get into it. And that's one of the reasons why, continuing on from what I talked about last night, the love of the 2A and the love of firearms. It's those little intricacies that add to the whole picture of a firearm to me. I've done the ladder loads. For those of you that aren't in the reloading spectrum, ladder loads are where you start at a certain point that you're expecting performance, and you load up ever so incrementally and try to get the best charge you possibly can, and then you back it back down, and then you do the same thing until you find that perfect sweet spot where it is the perfect charge, not too light, not too heavy, and gives you the best accuracy and best velocity you're going to get out of the rifle and the cartridge. I've done that for a lot of calibers in my collection. And it goes back to what my daddy taught me. So when someone asks me those questions, what's the real difference between a 62 grain and a 55 grain? And I have to ask them, well, what kind of barrel does your rifle have? And he had to look it up. And that's because, that's not something, unless you're really technical like I am, you would know. Or if you do know it, you probably learned it because you took it upon yourself, or you had a really good mentor. And that's, I can't speak highly enough about that. To ask the question. It sounds stupid, and he even felt like he was asking a stupid question. But it's a question I asked myself a long time ago. I personally like 55 grain because I like the speed. And usually that relates to effect on target and accuracy in my particular guns. The 62 grains do very well also. The 77 grains do really great on it. But I still kind of like the velocity because I've always been a velocity hound when it comes to cartridges. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great. I hope this rambling did some good to teach you some things about the barrel length and the weight of bullets and why they matter a little bit more than you think. Be great.